so many studies show entrepreneurship around the world is there, but the resources aren't there. I live in a resource rich city, Boston. New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco, little pockets, even Cleveland, Ohio has an incredible startup ecosystem that can really support entrepreneurship. But there are pockets in the US and in other countries that just don't have this. So I want to be a resource for that. And
Mhm.
while I can bring on a few luminaries on the show, I also like to be able to help a newbie founder get media prepared. So when
Great insights from my guest this week on Connect the Dots, Andy Lyons. Andy is a startup champion, 4 times founder, and live stream host of Startup Life Live. We had such a great conversation this week, but before we dive into the episode, I want to share a little bit more about Andy. She's an enthusiastic and experienced entrepreneur with 4 businesses to her credit. Andy is the host of the Startup Life Live show, where she conducts lively, engaging interviews with founders at all stages and industries and provides advice, tools, and resources to first time founders launching, branding, and building their businesses. Her earlier companies include .com, venture-backed College Broadcast, a broadband media portal with over 50,000 viewers per day. Goddess Granola, a gourmet food product Andy took from recipe to manufacturing, branding, and national distribution in less than 2 years. And Bring Back Desire, a website devoted to sharing tips, tools, and resources with couples seeking more love and intimacy in their relationship. Andy is the co-host of a popular startup pitch event in Boston for Founders Live. She loves sharing her startup wisdom all over social media and as a volunteer mentor at local nonprofit accelerator programs. Let's go ahead and dive into that conversation now with Andy. And welcome back to Connect the Dots. I have a guest today, I shouldn't say Miss, I'm going to call you Goddess Andy Lyons, because you are a goddess in so many different respects. And I want to welcome you to Connect the Dots. So welcome.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you so much for happening. And the funny thing about the word goddess, folks, is that one of my businesses, I'm a 4 times founder, and one of them was a food manufacturing business called Goddess Granola. And I called myself the chief executive goddess. And and people would just start calling me goddess. Oh, hey, Joey, goddess is on the phone, all these funny things. And it just stuck. And of course, goddess is above queen in stature. It really takes you to a divinity level, meaning, yes, you are ruling maybe your queendom, but even more so, you are divine in your presence. So when I say hello, goddess, to you or to anybody else, it's really acknowledging that full expression of your feminine divineness in the world.
That is awesome. I don't think I've ever heard that, seen that, read that, or even asked you that before to find out what the history or origination was for Goddess. And that's pretty cool. I love it. Glowing Goddess. That's the added piece to it as well.
Absolutely.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you? And I know you've mentioned that you were a founder of a company. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that journey as well? Because I know you're a 4-time founder.
That's
And
right.
yeah.
And I'm not I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was not hustling product and ideas in elementary school. I came from a very conservative, uh, New England Yankee family. They'll be having none of that, and in other words, there were no role models for me. But it happened after I earned my MBA. I went into banking, not because it was a fit, but because I wanted to do financial analysis on all types of companies. And I wanted to shore up my resume to show that I had the strong financial acumen and background. And finally, I wanted to learn how bankers thought. But prior to that, earning my MBA, I had always worked with founders. I had sat outside the door as an executive assistant to men who had launched a business and grown it. So I understood all the parts and pieces of a business. But what happened was in 92, I left the banking under interesting circumstances. That's for another story. But I had an opportunity to help a gentleman raised funding for a very innovative product called Aerobed. And that was the first mattress that you could blow up, okay, automatically blow up. And so I helped him do that. And then I helped, I did some consulting for some other folks. And then my husband and I launched a .com in 98. I was nursing a 6-month-old. I was chasing after a 3-year-old. And we launched a .com and moved to LA and built it up big time. We were doing early YouTube, Facebook. It was the college market. We provided entertainment content to over 250 college campuses. And we were online, we were on cable, and we were doing a lot of remarkable things on campus. We raised over 8 million in venture funding. It was a really great run. I'll never forget my husband being interviewed on Fox News in New York City and watching the ticker tape in 2000 and seeing the market starting to implode as the .com industry started to have that huge fallout. And we got swept up in that. We were very close to getting monetized, really, having profitable revenue happening. We had about 100 employees, and everything just imploded, and we could not stay alive, and we had to take it down to zero, and we sold that business for assets and liabilities. That's it. So then, I was thinking about getting a new job when 9/11 happened. And my husband actually flew from Boston to New York that day and was on the Triborough Bridge when the first plane was hit. So we were directly affected in our family from that experience. And I remember Martha Stewart saying, go into the kitchen and cook. And I'd had a craving for a wheat-free granola, and I couldn't find it on the shelf. So I just said, well, what would I want in a granola? And I grabbed all the ingredients off the shelf, stopped at the library on the way home to find a recipe, tweaked it, and started making it and started eating it all myself. And then everybody else started eating it and then craving it over the holidays. And someone said to me, hey, Andy, you know how to take this to a business. I said, look, I barely recovered from the last one. We lost a fortune with that one. It was horrible. And she said, no, this has legs. It really does. I said, look, if I can find a commercial bakery in my first phone call, I'll do it, because you cannot prepare food and sell it out of your home in Massachusetts. It's right up there with robbing a bank, the charges against the law. So I've made a phone call to a local caterer and asked him, like, do you have a commercial kitchen I can use? He goes, no, but I just hung up with Steve Jacobs from Boston Tea Cakes, and he's leasing his commercial bakery. And I went, oh, shoot. Dang.
Perfect timing.
I thought I put that line in the sand, like, and so, nope. And I swear to God, it was just like when you have your first kid, you barely are on the chapter ahead of where they are in the age. I barely knew what I was doing. Food, who would have thought it was going to be so hard? In hindsight, I just would have checked myself into a Betty Ford clinic or something. You have no idea how complicated food is, especially if you have a shelf life. But anyway, it took off. And instead of getting on the grocery shelves, and this is a really good sales moment, folks, I knew I couldn't compete on the grocery shelf. I mean, the margins, you have to have incredible margins because you have to pay a lot of money to distributors, to the store, everything. And so I became certified as a woman-owned business through WeBank, and was able to go in through supplier diversity programs. Yes, women are considered minority-owned business owners. And I went into food service. And so Sodexo and Aramark and Compass and all those big food services that, from the military to college campuses to corporate campuses to hospitals, they're the ones who take care of all their food service for them. I was scaled nationally in less than 24 months. And so it was
amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Especially for food. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I just made sure I showed up at all the vendor fairs where the chefs were making decisions. And I was in tons of corporate, from the big brokerage houses down in New York City to Comcast to you name it, and college campuses, et cetera. And I had snack size available as well as bulk. And but one of my favorite stories was through Sodexo at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute here in Boston. They would buy my product and give it away free on the chemo floor because it was one of the few things that was so rich in carbohydrates and it tasted so good that people who usually just can't get anything down when they're going through chemo actually were able to eat it and go, wow, this is good.
Oh, wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, so that was a great 5-year run
Yeah.
until things happen. And this is, a lot of times in the glorification of entrepreneurship, they don't talk about this, but they definitely talk about it in grad school when you're getting an MBA, which is the outside events that can hurt your business. So it can be something like a pandemic that can shut your business down and you did everything right. Okay. And it's an outside force. A tornado wipes everything out. In my case, several things happen. It was a snowball effect. So first, the maple syrup industry, that was practically my number one ingredient, got slammed, and the cost of getting maple syrup just skyrocketed, and it was really hard to get. Two, almond industry at the same time had a drought and became just so expensive to get almonds and could hardly get them. Especially, the order I was putting it in. Yeah, I wasn't a big Kellogg's cereal company yet. And then, if that wasn't hard enough, I was in the process of raising $250,000. I had used other angel money with Goddess Granola. I was in the process of raising another $250,000 to go the Kellogg's route. I had identified a manufacturing facility in the Midwest, and I was going to just really explode into the grocery shelves. When the place that was currently manufacturing my granola got hit by lightning and burned to the ground.
Oh my God. What are the odds?
Right. And so now I'm like, but still, I'm like, the fighter in me is like, okay, but I can come back, like that
I
Monty
can see that in
Python
you.
scene, right?
Yeah.
He's got his arms and legs cut off and he's still like, come on, fight like a man. But then my husband came home from work in the middle of the day and had been laid off.
Oh
And I thought,
no.
oh my God. So we have a 9 and a 7-year-old at home, right? That's when I knew I was done. I mean, there's only so much that we can tackle in life. And you have to understand that sometimes businesses have their soul cycles, right? They have their journeys. But I have to tell you, when I closed that baby down, I cried for months.
Oh, I bet. Because you
It
were on
was,
the trajectory,
and
right?
I
Everything was moving
loved it. I
upward.
mean, first of all, chief executive goddess, divinely delicious, goddess granola. I mean, I was nailing it big time. And
Well, and it
not a,
sounds like a story that you would hear on Shark Tank. Seriously, like
yeah,
when they always ask, like, well, what gave you the idea for this product? And a lot of times it is because someone just made their own concoction at home. It tasted good. They're like, hey, friends want to try it? Sure. And it just blossomed from there, which is the exact same thing that happened for you. I can understand the
exactly.
frustration too.
And here's a really fun story out of all of this. My angel investor, who lost well over 100K with me, said, Andy, even knowing this outcome going in, I still would have invested in you and Goddess Granola. It was a phenomenal run and we almost made it.
Oh my gosh, that speaks so highly of you and just not only your idea, but the way that you run a business and how you like can raise money and just make things grow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, fast forward a few years of Andy being in recovery from her
It's a
loss and
lot to go
grieving.
through. Yeah.
Um, I came up with another idea, which was especially after both kids went off to camp during the summer months, and I was sitting there going, "Now what do I do?" Um, and it was the fact that I really had a deep appreciation because I've been with my darling man for a long time. We're 36 years in now for 2021 since we first met, but um, I knew that a lot of couples lost intimacy over the years and that it was so important to stay tuned in and turned on with each other. And nobody was talking about this. And so I
Like I
just
will.
and I thought, well, you know what, this kind of, I know how the female brain works, the heterosexual female brain, and there's not enough conversation about this because we don't look at a Victoria's Secret model and go, ooh, I'm excited. And so it's we're emotionally turned on, and romance is really important to us as well as, the titillating content of it all. So I used a local business plan competition to help me get focused. This was 2008, and blogging and online marketing was happening, and I knew nothing really about it. I mean, I knew enough from Goddess Granola. I had an online presence and a newsletter and all of that. Email marketing, I understood, but I didn't know the real digital landscape yet. And so I used this business plan competition as a way to help me understand my business model and how I was going to do it, and gave myself a deadline to figure it out. Because sometimes we can have a great idea and it can go off and on forever because we don't have that deadline to hold our feet to the fire. So I used that deadline, submitted it, and really learned a lot. And thought, wow, this could have legs. And then I got a call a few weeks later saying that I'd made the quarterfinals, semifinals. And I said, no, you don't want me pitching this in front of people. They go, no, we love
Maybe
this
that's why it
idea.
made it that far.
And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm talking about women's sexuality in a really deep way.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we love it. And we've assigned you two mentors, Anita Brereton, managing director of Golden Seeds, which is one of the longest standing angel groups that invest in women founders, and the head of Suffolk University's MBA entrepreneurship program, Susie Ornston. And so I got to be mentored by them. They loved the idea. And so then it comes to pitching this idea. And in an old Victorian aged townhouse in downtown, in Back Bay, Boston. And all of a sudden I was like, what the heck am I doing here? This is awful. What was I thinking? Because, a little networking before. Hi, I'm Andy Lyons. And the name of the business was Bring Back Desire. And people just looked at me like, and they froze.
They're like, wait, what did she say? How am I going to relate to that? Do I want to talk about this?
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
just fast forward. I was the last one to go pitch. And I really kept thinking, just leave, just walk out of the room. They won't go, oh, where'd she go? But no, I showed up, and everybody else out in the Q&A period afterwards, lots of conversation. And in the room, I mean, I've been in Boston a long time. In the room were, head of industry here, healthcare, venture capital, investment banking, law, all the categories were in the room. And I do my pitch, and afterwards, you could hear crickets. There were no questions.
Like, we have enough information.
And I was,
you did that great on the pitch, though. That's the thing. They didn't have any questions because you covered
around,
everything.
Vicki. I love that. So, and this is all connecting the dots, folks, because I put that on the shelf. I was so horrified at myself. I'm a gutsy gal, but I said, Andy, you took that way too far this time. What were you thinking?
I love it. It shows that you've got a lot. You take risks. You just do. And when you see an opportunity, you go for it. I love that.
Well, 2 years later, now Dr. Oz and Oprah and everybody, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they're all talking about it.
See, and you started it.
So,
you started the whole thing.
And so I said, shoot, I've got to do this. So I, LLC'd it the end of 2010, and I launched it in June of 2011 with a pit in my stomach. And even then I thought, do I use a nom de plume, or however you call that, an anonymous name, or am I just Andy, your next door neighbor, mother, wife?
Yeah.
And that's what I chose to do. And I did videos, and I had, conversations with experts, and I had a very tasteful, playful website, which to this day, you can hop on Facebook to see. Nobody ever went out of line. And this is where we go to connect the dots, because I had to keep my professional persona, Andy Lyons, founder, for the platforms. LinkedIn was just starting then, and Twitter and all those places. And I had to Bring Back Desire's brand. So I was branding myself, and I was branding a playful, tasteful 21 plus website. And let me tell you, that is the best exercise for marketing and for digital marketing, because there was my voice for me in the world on Twitter chats and Facebook. And then there was the voice for Bring Back Desire and building awareness, and having, blogging every week on topics that I swear to gosh, I laughed out loud so many times. And again, I live in a very puritanical part of the world. It's not like I was in Portland, Oregon, or LA. And so I would go to networking events here, and women, especially women my age, would look at me aghast at what I was doing and really gave me the cold shoulder. And
Really?
oh, yeah. And one woman said to me, "What does your husband think about what you're doing?"
He
And
loves it.
I said, "Yeah, he loves it when I bring my work home."
Yeah. What man wouldn't?
What
What
do you
spouse
think?
wouldn't? Yeah.
But I learned a lot. And there's just so much out there about what turns a woman on and how she can stay tuned in and turned on. Because a woman, when she hits the floor in the morning, she's thinking about the kids, she's thinking about her work, she's thinking about her church community, she's thinking about the grocery shopping and the laundry and all of these things. And when she falls back into bed that night, she is done. And the whole thing, the guy says, "I'm going to bed, honey," and he goes to bed, and the woman goes, "I'm going to bed, honey," and she does 20 things on her way to bed. It's just
Yeah.
how we are wired as women.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about that and how to get sex on the brain for women. But I also learned a lot about how women tend to look at men and want a hairy woman, meaning they look at the golden retriever and say, "I wish you were a Siamese cat." It's impossible.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times women set themselves up for failure because they have expectations of their male partner that are so out of alignment with what they could ever deliver. And that's why we have our women's support groups. I also learned a lot about porn addiction. I was able to share so many different things with folks, and it was a great, I think it was about a 4-year run. And it was a great way to learn about connecting and building awareness on the digital
Especially on a
marketing scene.
sensitive subject too.
Right. And again, it's tonality,
Mm-hmm.
and never and the 5,000 followers on the Facebook page and the 35,000 visitors a month, plus sometimes 50,000 a month, all the traction that this business got. Not once did anybody step out of line. So it never crossed over into that yucky porn mentality. It always
Mm-hmm.
stayed tasteful and playful with a wink and a nod and a twinkle. But,
It
so
showed that there was a market for it, right? And that maybe people were interested in it, but they themselves weren't ready
yes,
to talk publicly about
right.
it. So that's why there was a need for it, and you were able to fulfill that.
Yes, and my initial target market was women my age, baby boomers and Gen X's. But what I quickly learned was the people who were ready to talk about it were the millennials.
Yeah, they're a little bit more ready and a little bit more open with how they talk about things.
But again, business, to any business owner, anybody trying to figure out, this is the beauty of just going and doing it, and then being thoughtful about who your end user is, what is the language you want to do, and create a leadership role in that so that you can keep the tonality in a place and space where there's not um, hurtful comments or inappropriate comments. So, and
Yeah.
boy, was it a great way to learn digital marketing. I have a hard time
Yeah.
saying digital.
Even with the last two companies, the granola company and then this company, just the learnings that you had to have experienced, because not just from a branding and an online or just a marketing perspective, but also just identifying who your target customer is. And like you said, the tonality of it, like how you talk to each of those audiences are completely different.
Right.
And that goes to show how you can, pivot when you need to. And, you found an opportunity, you're able to pivot your thought and where you could actually grow a business. And even though there's a lot of sensitivities around the subject, there was still an openness and acceptance of it, maybe just not publicly, but behind the scenes.
Well, and also just, being just natural about it myself, not going, "Oh my gosh, this is all," but just
Yeah.
coming at it from we're human. We're trying to
Yeah.
figure these things out. It's nice that you don't, all these affairs that break up relationships are because the couple certainly love each other, but they become roommates. Intimacy is just so
Yeah.
important for long lasting relationships, plus all the other dynamics of men and women, heterosexual. It's just so hard. And I felt like really good about adding value and having those conversations to help women and the men come to a different understanding and have better relationships in their lives as a result. And this was, for couples, this were long-term people, long-term relationships that were trying to stay together, which is
Yeah. And you were
not easy
speaking
year
from,
after year.
yeah, you're speaking from experience, right? You were leading from what you had experienced and sharing that with others, knowing that there were people out there that were experiencing the same things and actually needed what you had to
Right.
offer. And that's
And
what built that connection and the
right.
engagement and the following.
Yeah. And also trying to figure out as an older woman, tweet chats. I remember my first Twitter chat. I was exhausted. I felt like I'd run the marathon. And this is in 2011,
Yeah, they
figuring
move
out,
fast.
yeah. And then,
Mhm.
understanding the live stream and videos and how to figure out all that technology stuff. And then I had launched a podcast in 2012, as well as the live stream,
You were early
interviewing
with that
people.
too, with both
Yeah.
of those technologies,
And
podcasting and live streaming.
yeah, and so it was just fascinating. But what happened, Vicki, was that in 2015, I just was pulling my hair out because I was seeing so much bad advice online about growing a business. And I'm sure you understand this because you are a numbers gal. You understand the sales and marketing, and it's data driven, period,
Mhm.
end of story.
Right.
And people were calling sales and marketing creating a meme. And there was a little bit in, with all due respect to network marketing, there was a network marketing component to the advice being given out there. And I said, look, I can't watch this anymore. And I felt really complete, with my work with Bring Back Desire. I'd served enough people and helped enough people and myself as well. And so I pivoted out of that gracefully this time. I didn't cry for 3 months. It did, come to a horrible end. And I went into the startup world. I just felt that that would be a good niche for me. I started, working, volunteering at local accelerator programs here in the Boston area, and started to carve out my name and a niche in this category, bringing what I call the Andy Lyons brand to the conversation. Because again, a lot of the people talking about the startup world and launching a business were men, and everybody was pretty darn serious. And then there was this whole component called the glorification of entrepreneurship. So another great way of making people feel a lot of shame and blame over not having a successful outcome. So I'm not your typical cashed out, exited, hugely financially successful entrepreneur. I'm just a woman who's figured out how to launch a business, have repeat sales, and have an impact on, my own bottom line in my family, but also in my fulfillment as a human.
Mhm.
We don't talk enough about that as well. A business is not always about becoming a unicorn
Mhm.
and raising millions. It's about having an impact in your family, community, maybe.
Mhm. And I think you're having a big impact too with what you're doing because you've done so much with starting a company, being a founder and getting funds and getting partners and really growing a brand from nothing, from ideation to a successful business.
Right.
And I think that is what you're focusing on right now is just helping other people understand what it's really like, right? It's not the glorified view of what you only see in a snapshot video on Instagram or Facebook. It's the, behind the scenes, nitty gritty, realistic view of what having your own business is like. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you focus on that, including like the people that you bring onto your show?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Vicki, because it's kind of like the red carpet. You're going to see all the A game stars, right? But what
Mhm.
about that character actor that is constantly working, but they're not a name brand? Okay. It's the same thing in founders. They still have to go through the training, they still have to get good at their game. And so I have several outcomes that I look for with each show. I go live twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 noon EST. And I bring in founders who are in the trenches, figuring it out for the first time so that they can tell like their horror stories. And we can all
Mhm.
go, wow, totally relate. That's totally normal. Like just the other day, a founder told us how she had hired a developer, but didn't realize that he was just a front end developer. And he didn't have the maturity to let her know that he was just a front end developer. So when they went to do the back end stage of the app development, he disappeared, completely ghosted her, and took off with the code. So they had to start completely from scratch.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
these are the stories people just do not talk about. So
Mhm.
while an audience may want to hear from the super duper luminary entrepreneurs, I feel a deep calling to bring in first diverse founders so that we have more representation, women, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and other abled founders, so that others like that can look and say, wow, they can do it, I can do it. Two, every conversation talks about the business model. We talk about proving a value proposition. We talk about the business model, customer acquisition. We talk about what Vicki talks about all the time, right? And in bringing that in, team acquisition. How do we bring folks in when we can't offer them the salary that they would get normally? And our role as founders. And do you need a co-founder, or what's it like to have all of that? And what
Mhm.
does success look like for the person I'm interviewing? And that's
Mhm.
another thing that's so important. You can't let other people identify what success is supposed to look like for your business. I love Gary Vee's quote where he says, I'd rather be happy driving my Toyota than crying in my Ferrari. It's that sort of thing. You want to be in that place and space that's right for you, but it takes time. So on each show, I really want to make sure that I'm training and coaching to first-time founders what they need to be thinking about, just like you do here in Connect the Dots, and how you need to be looking at your business and making sure that you have the mindset hacks in place, because it is a very difficult journey filled with a ton of uncertainty. And rarely do you have any evidence that you're on the right path.
You usually don't. And I think one
Yeah.
of the great things about your live stream is that the people you bring on have, like you mentioned, they have these experiences that everybody else can learn from, right? So it's a great opportunity to be like, oh, hey, Vicki did this. So, and this was a failure for her. So at least be cognizant of the fact that it happens so that you can at least plan for something similar and like how you're going to go around it so you can continue on your
That's
path.
right. And
Yeah.
also, so you can see too, when is it time to hang up the shingle and move on to your next idea?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
not all businesses are going to work out. I mean, the failure rate is huge. And again, who talks about that? I mean, we hear it, of course, but then we focus on everybody who's winning at it. And also, there's so much pressure on raising capital. And we talk a lot about the fact that many of the successful businesses are bootstrapped. And how do they figure that out? How do
Mhm.
they take advantage of grant money? How do they take advantage of friends and family rounds? What kind of runway can they get doing that? And the pressure that happens when you do raise capital. I mean, again, glorifying capital raise. There's so many new VC funds out there. It's ridiculous. And nobody talks about what the VC funds agenda is.
Yeah.
They all
Or
think
what
it's
they have to do with those funds or what happens after they become successful in order to, to pay back the funds or whatever the agreement terms are with that VC.
oh my gosh. And the runway gets really short and the pressure is on. So, yeah, you closed a 10 million, $100 million series A, B, or C round, but now your feet are so held to the fire. It's ridiculous. And it's a great time for a company to just completely fall apart because the
Yeah.
pressure from the investors is so hard.
And you've got
So
all that experience too. Isn't that one of the programs that you offer founders is to help them with funding, or is that
I
something?
used to do that. Yes, I used to
Okay, you
help
don't do
everybody with
that
their
anymore.
pitch deck. Well, what came to be over the last year, this happened in January 2021, is that I fell in love with this format and this ability to coach to more pockets of entrepreneurship in the world, that I stopped coaching and am doing this full time, because so many studies show entrepreneurship around the world is there, but the resources aren't there. I live in a resource rich city, Boston. New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco, little pockets, even Cleveland, Ohio has an incredible startup ecosystem that can really support entrepreneurship. But there are pockets in the US and in other countries that just don't have this. So I want to be a resource for that. And
Mhm.
while I can bring on a few luminaries on the show, I also like to be able to help a newbie founder get media prepared. So when I get some folks on my show that have never been interviewed before, so I coach them through the process so that they can get some legs underneath them and do more. And then, get the confidence, because I make it so much fun, and I bring that Andy Lyonsness to it, so they don't feel threatened. They don't feel like they have to be at their A game, that I will carry them through. So there's just a lot of different facets to the show that just
I,
lights me up every time.
that's important too, and that's what energizes you to keep moving forward as well, because you can see that you're helping other people, not only with your platform and giving them some place that they can share their story and share their voice, but also helping other entrepreneurs or people who might be considering going down that path on what they can expect, because you've got so many different resources. How do you
Oh,
go
yeah.
about finding guests for your show?
Well, a couple things happen, which is I am on Twitter and LinkedIn, and if I get newsletters from cohorts, accelerators, and they spotlight someone, I go, "Ooh, that would be a good person." Then I check them out on video, and so I get an idea of what I'll be working with, and so um, and see if they're a good fit for the show, see what they've been up to. Then I'll invite them, and sometimes I never hear back. Other times I get them booked right away. It's wonderful. And of course, and then public relations, PR firms reach out to me all the time now, which is great. So that if they bring me somebody who I think is going to show up, and that they're going to show up, the PR firm as well. Now they've been around a while, I've got enough episodes, I have about 125 episodes under my tiara. I can, start pushing back on them and saying, what are you going to do to help promote this? Because folks, I am not a luminary. I am a regular gal who has launched 4 businesses and had traction with them. And so I can point to a lot of great experiences. And I've coached, and I've been part of accelerator programs. I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs, but I'm a quote nobody in the world of the luminary startups. So for me, it's, how do I get more traction so I can have a greater impact? And so I stay curious, which I encourage all founders to do. Geez, what thread can I pull on? And I, blundered and, and pulled on things that just didn't work out, didn't pan out. And how much do I want to invest on this? What's that going to look like? And so I definitely need to hire someone to help me with my SEO for sure. Growth hacking is key. And I'm still looking for better pathways to reaching everybody. So you got to check in with me in 12 months. And then, of course, I have a great sponsorship package, a one pager, and I've been reaching out to all sorts of sponsors and getting crickets. So
I definitely want you to share that information with me so that I can include it with the show notes, but then also anybody who I think might be a good fit, then I can at least send that to them as well. It'll be in
thank
my
you. Thank you
pocket
so
of
much,
goodies.
Vicki, for that. It means the world. Folks, we get ahead because other folks open doors for us. They add wind to our sails. And every day that's what I try, work on for founders and my audience. In
Well, you
fact,
do.
I encourage all my audience members to please share their business name, their one-liner, and their URL so I can bring it on the screen, and I get out my clappers. This is what they sound like. And we give them a round of applause, because you never know who's going to be tuning into the show that might see your business. And we have to constantly, as founders, be amplifying our businesses.
Yeah, I agree. And you had mentioned earlier that you stream in multiple places. Where are the different places that you stream live to?
I stream live to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, both personal and the page, and YouTube and Twitch. I'm getting zero traction on Twitch, but I just go there anyway because it's the thing I can check off. I use StreamYard as the platform. As a seasoned live stream host, it is for me not only the easiest platform to use. I know this sounds crazy, but aesthetics for me are important, and it's all white background. It's very Apple-like. I don't even use Apple, but it has that nice, clean, crisp. And, for example, Restream is wonderful as well. Many people use Restream, but it's all dark background. And for me, the colors really, and the ease of use, it annoyed me. And I also love the story of the StreamYard founders, 2 kids who I've got shoes older than them, and how they not only did they launch this business in beta in November of 2018, they brought people like me in to test it. Then they came out in 2019, November, fully, launched. And from that point, when they launched at that point, they have had every Sunday evening a half-hour live stream with their community, a town hall meeting. They have
That's
not
impressive.
missed it.
Yeah. Oh,
And like that, I mean, every Sunday to talk to their community. What do we need to be doing better? What
Mhm.
ideas do you have? It is like brilliant. And as a sales and marketing goddess, Vicki, I know you can appreciate how important it is to let your customers guide you as to
Yes.
what to bring next.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great thing for them to do because it's getting feedback from the people they serve best and making what they do even better. So I applaud them for doing it. I didn't know that they did that.
And by the way, happy outcome for them. They just raised family and friends. And so in 2021, in February, they sold to the platform Hopin for $200 million.
It's not too shabby, right? No, that's
Incredible.
pretty impressive. Yeah, that's impressive.
And they didn't have any investor capital. Okay. So
That's
yeah, that they had a
crazy.
lot of ownership there.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive. Well, how can we support you and what you're doing in
Oh.
2022 and beyond?
Thank you so much. I love it when people can, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That really helps. I'm crawling my way to, I have like 100, maybe 150, 160 more subscriptions to go before I reach that 1,000 mark. And as Vicki will tell you, when on YouTube, when you hit the 1,000 mark, YouTube gives you a little win back to your sale. And everybody says it took me 2 seconds to get to 2,000 subscribers, but it took me years to get to 1,000.
It really does. It takes forever.
Oh my gosh. But also feel free if you're really interested in the founder world, please, or if you know somebody who is, the shows are really helpful and they bring joy, at the same time as, we're crying in the champagne together after we just popped it. We're talking about the real stories, but really incredible resources are shared. So I invite everybody to join the meetup group. I have it startup, Vicki will have the link, but it's Startup Life Live on Meetup. And that way you receive an alert whenever I post a new episode. And of course, link in with me. Let's connect on Twitter or Instagram, Andy Lyons, ANDELYONS. And then it's very easy to listen to the show at your favorite podcast platform, but also just on my website. I just have a tab there, podcast. You can just hit play right there, easy breezy, to catch some of the Andy Licious conversations and advice that I have with founders and share with founders.
They really are Andy Licious conversations too. I've attended several live sessions
And you've been a guest too.
and I've been a
Thank you. Thank
guest.
you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Oh my
But
gosh.
it's a really great opportunity if you are considering to be a founder. If you're thinking about being a founder and you really want to listen to other people's stories, attending live is a great way to get questions answered on the spot, either by Andy or her guest. And you can choose whichever platform that you are most comfortable on. So, YouTube is always my go-to just because I like YouTube and
Yep.
it's easy to engage with everybody there. But then it also gives you an opportunity to connect with other people who might be in the same stage as you are and attending for the same reasons that you are. So then you can actually have others that you can kind of go to and work with Andy and, get some additional exposure into all the different guests that she has because they're super, super helpful. So I definitely recommend doing that.
Yeah, they'll give you the right arm to help you. It's amazing. And founders will do that. We talk a lot about how important it is to have your peer group, your founder group, because no one will ever understand what you're going through, not your family, not your friends. And often they're looking at you like you're a train wreck about to happen and they can't take the suspense, right? And meanwhile, you're thriving because you're solving problems and you're in it.
Yeah.
You've got your big why. And so only other founders. And so that's the beauty of the live stream as well, as you can meet other founders and build up your own network as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you can attend a live and then you can listen to the recording later.
Yep, replay or video. Yep.
Yep, the repetition. It's really helpful too. So I highly recommend, like Andy mentioned, subscribing to her YouTube channel. So let's help her get to 1,000. It's a huge benchmark and she's been working so hard and diligently and intelligently to get to that point. So I would love to help support her. If there's anything that you take away from this interview, in this podcast episode, this video, if you're watching it on YouTube, is to hit subscribe on Andy's channel. Let's help her get there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And listeners, thank you so much for adding wind to the sail so we can reach more founders. And as I always say, maximize the joy and minimize the heartache from their founder journey.
Yes, absolutely. And you always add wind to my sails, Andy. Anytime I see anything from you or anytime we go in the DMs or if I'm on one of your lives, you are always encouraging, positive, supportive. You're a cheerleader to anybody that you interact with. So it's a
Aw.
huge honor and a true pleasure to know you and then also have the pleasure of interviewing you for this podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Vicki. I'm giving
Virtual
Vicki a
hugs.
virtual hug. Thank you so very
Yay.
much.
Well, thank you so much. And everybody, don't forget to subscribe to her channel and then also leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this episode. If you have questions for Andy, leave those there as well. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, until next time, make today great.